Chapter 9. Cigarettes and Alcohol. Saturday, July 15th, 1995. Walthamstow and Soho. Portrait in Crimson, a novel by Emma T. Wilde. Chapter 1. DCI Penny Something had seen some murder scenes in her time, but never one as blank as this. "Has the body been moved?" she snapped. The words glowed in bilious green on the word processor's screen, the product of a whole morning's work. She sat at this tiny school desk in the tiny back room of the tiny new flat, read the words, then read them again, while behind her the immersion heater gurgled in derision. At weekends or in the evenings, if she could find the energy, Emma wrote. She had made a start on 2 novels, one set in a gulag, the other in a post-apocalyptic future, a children's picture book, with her own illustrations, about a giraffe with a short neck, a gritty, angry TV drama about social workers called Tough Shit, a fringe play about the complex emotional lives of 20-somethings, a fantasy novel for teenagers featuring evil robot teachers, a stream of consciousness radio play about a dying suffragette, a comic strip, and a sonnet. None had been completed, not even the 14 lines of sonnet. These words on the screen represented her latest project, an attempt at a series of commercial, discreetly feminist crime novels. She had read all of Agatha Christie at 11 years old, and later lots of Chandler and James M. Cain, too. There seemed no reason why she shouldn't try writing something in between, but she was discovering once again that reading and writing were not the same. You couldn't just soak it up, then squeeze it out again. She found herself unable to think of a name for her detective, let alone a cohesive original plot, and even her pseudonym was poor. Emma T. Wilde? She wondered if she was doomed to be one of those people who spend their lives trying things. She had tried being in a band, writing plays and children's books. She had tried acting and getting a job in publishing. Perhaps crime fiction was just another failed project to place alongside trapeze, Buddhism, and Spanish. She used the computer's word count feature, 35 words including the title page and her rotten pseudonym. Emma groaned, released the hydraulic lever on the side of her office chair, and sank a little closer to the carpet. There was a knock on the plywood door. "How are things in the Anne Frank wing?" That line again. For Ian, a joke was not a single-use item, but something you brought out again and again until it fell apart in your hands like a cheap umbrella. When they had first started seeing each other, approximately 90% of what Ian said came under the heading of humor, in that it involved a pun, a funny voice, some comic intent. Over time, she had hoped to get this down to 40%, 40 being a workable allowance, but nearly 2 years later the figure stood at 75, and domestic life continued against this tinnitus of mirth. Was it really possible for someone to be on for the best part of 2 years? She had got rid of his black bed sheets, the beer mats, secretly culled his underpants, and there were fewer of his famous summer roasts, but even so she was reaching the limits of how much it's possible to change a man. "Nice cup of tea for the lady," he said in the voice of a Cockney char. "No thanks, love." "Eggy bread?" Scottish now. "Can I do you some eggy bread, ma wee snooch?" Snooch was a recent development. When pressed to justify himself, Ian had explained that it was because she was so snoochy, so very, very snooch. There had been a suggestion that she might reciprocate by calling him Scooch. Scooch and snooch, snoochy and scoochy, but it hadn't stuck. "Wee slice of eggy bread? Line your stomach for tonight?" Tonight. There it was. Often when Ian was working through his dialects, it was because he had something on his mind that couldn't be said in a natural voice. "Big night tonight. Out on the town with Mike TV." She decided to ignore the remark, but he wasn't making it easy. His chin resting on her head, he read the words on the screen. "Portrait in Crimson." She covered the screen with her hand. "Don't read over my shoulder, please." "Emma T. Wilde. Who's Emma T. Wilde?" "My pseudonym. Ian, you know what the T stands for?" "Terrible?" "Terrible." "Terrific. Tremendous." "Tired, as in sick, and if you ever want me to read it, why would you want to read it? It's crap." "Nothing you do is crap." "Well, this is." Twisting her head away, she clicked the monitor off, and without turning round, she knew he'd be doing his hangdog look. All too often, this was how she found herself with Ian, switching back and forth between irritation and remorse. "Sorry," she said. taking his hands by the fingers and shaking it. He kissed the top of her head, then spoke into her hair. You know what I think it stands for? V, as in the bollocks. Emma T. B. Wild. With that he left, a classic technique, compliment and run. Keen not to cave in straight away, Emma pushed the door to, turned the monitor back on, read the words there, shuddered visibly, closed the file, and dragged it to the icon of the wastebasket. An electronic crumpling noise, the sound of writing. The squeal of the smoke alarm indicated that Ian was cooking. She stood and followed the smell of burning butter down the hall into the kitchen/diner, not a separate room, just the greasiest corner of the living room of the flat that they had bought together. Emma had been unsure about buying. It felt like the kind of place that the police get called to, she said, but Ian had worn her down. It was crazy to rent. They saw each other most nights anyway. It was near her school, a foot on the ladder, etc., and so they had scraped together the deposit and bought some books on interior decoration, including one that told you how to paint plywood so that it looked like fine Italian marble. There had been inspirational talk of putting the fireplace back in, of bookshelves and fitted cupboards and storage solutions, exposed floorboards. Ian would hire a sander and expose the floorboards as law demanded. On a wet Saturday in February, they had lifted the carpet, peered despondently underneath at the mess of moldering chipboard, disintegrating underlay, and old newspapers, then guiltily nailed it all back in place as if disposing of a corpse. There was something unpersuasive and impermanent about these attempts at homemaking, as if they were children building a den, and despite the fresh paint, the prints on the walls, the new furniture, the flat retained its shabby, temporary air. Now Ian stood in the kitchenette in a shaft of smoky sunlight with his broad back towards her. Emma watched him from the doorway, taking in the familiar old gray t-shirt, with the holes in, an inch of his underpants visible above his tracksuit bottoms, his Trekkie bots. She could see the words Calvin Klein against the brown hair on the small of his back, and it occurred to her that this was probably not at all what Calvin Klein had in mind. She spoke to break the silence. Isn't that getting a bit burnt? Not burnt, crispy. I say burnt, you say crispy. Let's call the whole thing off. Silence. I can see the top of your underpants, she said. Yes, that's deliberate, lisping, effeminate voice. It's called fashion, sweetheart. Well, it's certainly very provocative. Nothing, just the sound of food burning, but it was Ian's turn to cave this time. So, where's Alpha Boy taking you then? He said without turning round. Somewhere in Soho. I don't know. In fact, she did know, but the restaurant's name was a recent byword for modish, metropolitan dining, and she didn't want to make matters worse. Ian, if you don't want me to go tonight... No, you go. Enjoy yourself. Or if you want to come with us. What, Harry and Sally and me? Oh, I don't think so, do you? You'd be very welcome. The two of you bantering and talking over me all night. We don't do that. You did last time. No, we didn't. You're sure you don't want some eggy bread? No. And anyway, I've got a gig tonight, haven't I? House of Ha Ha, Putney. A paid gig? Yes, a paid gig, he snapped, so I'm fine, thank you very much. He started searching noisily in the cupboard for some brown sauce. Don't worry about me. Emma sighed irritably. If you don't want me to go, just say so. Emma, we're not joined at the hip. You go if you want. Enjoy yourself. The sauce bottle wheezed consumptively. Just don't get off with him, will you? Well, that's hardly going to happen, is it? No, so you keep saying. He's going out with Suki Meadows. But if he wasn't, it wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference, because I love you. Still, this wasn't enough. Ian said nothing, and Emma sighed, crossed the kitchen, her feet sucking on the lino, and looped her arms around his waist, feeling him pull it in as she did so. Pressing her face against his back, she inhaled the familiar warm body smell, kissed the fabric of his t-shirt, mumbled, "Stop being daft," and they stood like this for a while, until it became clear that Ian was keen to start eating. Right, better mark these essays, she said, and walked away. 28 numbing opinions on Viewpoint in To Kill a Mockingbird. Em, he said as she reached the door, what are you doing this afty? Round about 1700 hours? Should be finished, why? He hitched himself up onto the kitchen units with the plate on his lap. Thought we might go to bed for, a bit of afternoon delight. I love him, she thought. I'm just not in love with him, and also I don't love him. I've tried. I've strained to love him, but I can't. I'm building a life with a man I don't love, and I don't know what to do about it. Maybe, she said from the doorway. Maybe. And she pouted her lips into a kiss, smiled, and closed the door. There were no more mornings, only mornings after. Heart thumping, soaked with sweat, Dexter was woken just after midday by a man bellowing outside, but it turned out to be M. People. He had fallen asleep in front of the television again and was now being urged to search for the hero inside himself. The Saturdays after the late-night lock-in were always spent like this, in the stale air, blinds drawn against the sun. Had she still been around, his mother would have been shouting up the stairs for him to get up and do something with the day, but instead he sat smoking on the black leather sofa in last night's underpants, playing Ultimate Doom on the PlayStation and trying not to move his head. By mid-afternoon, he could feel weekend melancholy creep up on him, and so decided to practice his mixing. Something of an amateur DJ, Dexter had a wall full of CDs and rare vinyl in bespoke pine racks, 2 turntables, and a microphone, all tax-deductible, and could often be spotted in record shops in Soho, wearing an immense pair of headphones like halved coconuts. Still in his underpants, he mixed idly back and forth between break beats on his brand-new CD mixing decks in preparation for the next big night in with mates. But something was missing, and he soon gave up. CDs, not vinyl, he announced, then realized that he had said this to an entirely empty room. Melancholy again, he sighed and crossed to the kitchen, moving slowly like a man recovering from surgery. The massive fridge was full to overflowing with bottles of an exciting new brand of upmarket cider, as well as presenting the show Car Crash Television, they called it, apparently a good thing. He had recently expanded into voiceovers. He was classless, they said, also apparently a good thing. The exemplar of a new breed of British man, metropolitan, moneyed, not embarrassed by his masculinity, his sex drive, his liking for cars, and big titanium watches and gadgets and brushed steel. So far he had done voiceovers for this premium bottled cider designed to appeal to a young Ted Baker-wearing crowd, and a new breed of men's razor, an extraordinary sci-fi object with a multitude of blades and a lubricating strip that left a mucal trail as if someone had sneezed on your chin. He had even dipped his toe into the world of modeling, a long-standing ambition that he had never dared to voice and which he was quick to dismiss as just a bit of a laugh. Only this month he had featured in a fashion spread in a men's magazine, the theme gangster chic, and over 9 pages he had chewed cigars or lain riddled with bullets in a number of tailored double-breasted suits. Copies of the magazine were accidentally scattered round the flat, so that guests might casually stumble upon it. There was even a copy by the toilet, and he sometimes found himself sitting there and staring at his own photo, dead but beautifully tailored and splayed across the bonnet of a Jag. Presenting Car Crash Television was fine for a while, but you could only crash the car so many times. At some point in the future, he would have to do something good, as opposed to so bad it's good. And in an attempt to acquire some credibility, he had set up his own production company, Mayhem TV plc. At the moment, Mayhem only existed as a stylish logo on some heavy stationery, but that would surely change. It would have to. As his agent Aaron had said, "You're a great youth presenter, Dexy. Trouble is, you're not a youth." What else might he be capable of, given the breaks? Acting? He knew a lot of actors, but both professionally and socially. Played poker with a few of them, and frankly, if they could do it. Yes, professionally and socially, the last couple of years had been a time of opportunity, of great mates, canapes and premieres, helicopter rides, and a lot of yammering about football. There had been low points, of course, a sense of anxiety and crippling dread, 1 or 2 instances of public vomiting. There was something about his presence in a bar or club that made other men want to shout abuse or even hit him, and recently he had been bottled off stage while introducing a Kula Shaker concert. That was no fun. In a recent What's Hot and What's Not column, he had been listed as not hot. This not hotness had weighed heavily on his mind, but he tried to dismiss it as envy. Envy was just the tax you paid on success. There had been other sacrifices on his part. Regretfully, he had been obliged to shuffle off some old friends from university. Because after all, it wasn't 1988 anymore. His old flatmate Callum, the one he was meant to start a business with, continued to leave increasingly sarcastic messages, but Dexter hoped he'd get the idea soon. What were you meant to do, all live in a big house together for the rest of your lives? No. Friends were like clothes, fine while they lasted, but eventually they wore thin or you grew out of them. With this in mind, he had adopted a 3-in, 1-out policy. In place of the old friends he had let go, he had taken on 30, 40, 50 more successful, better-looking friends. It was impossible to argue with the sheer volume of friends, even if he wasn't sure he actually liked all of them. He was famous. Notorious for his cocktails, his reckless generosity, his DJing, and his after-show parties back at his flat, and many were the mornings that he had woken in the smoky wreckage to find that his wallet had been stolen. Never mind. There had never been a better time to be young, male, successful, and British. London was buzzing, and he felt as if this was somehow down to him, a VAT-registered man in possession of a modem and a mini-disc player, a famous girlfriend, and many, many cufflinks. He owned a fridge full of premium cider and a bathroom full of multi-bladed razors, and though he disliked cider and the razors gave him a rash, life was pretty good here, with the blinds down, in the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of the year, in the middle of the decade, close to the center of the most exciting city on earth. The afternoon stretched before him. Soon it would be time to call his dealer. There was a party tonight in a huge house off Ladbroke Grove. He had to see Emma for dinner first, but could probably get rid of her by 11. Emma lay in the avocado bathtub and heard the front door close as Ian set off on the long journey to the House of Ha Ha in Putney to perform his stand-up act, 15 unhappy minutes on some differences between cats and dogs. She reached for her glass of wine on the bathroom floor, held it in both hands, and frowned at the mixer taps. It was remarkable how quickly the glee of home ownership had faded, how insubstantial and tatty their combined possessions seemed in the small flat, with its thin walls and someone else's carpets. It wasn't that the place was dirty. Every single surface had been scrubbed with a wire brush, but it retained an unnerving stickiness and a smell of old cardboard that seemed impossible to shift. On their first night, after the front door had closed and the champagne had been opened, she had felt like bursting into tears. "It's bound to take time before it feels like our home," Ian had said as he held her in bed that night. And at least they had their foot on the ladder, but the idea of scaling that ladder together, rung by rung over the years, filled her with a terrible gloom. And what was at the top? Enough of this. Tonight was meant to be a special occasion, a celebration, and she hauled herself from the bathtub, brushed and flossed her teeth until her gums were sore, sprayed herself liberally with an invigorating floral woodiness, then searched her sparse wardrobe for an outfit that didn't make her look like Miss Morley, the English teacher, on a night out with her famous friend. She decided on some painful shoes and a small black cocktail dress that she had bought while drunk in Karen Millen. She looked at her watch and, with time to kill, flicked on the television. On a nationwide quest to find Britain's most talented pet, Suki Meadows was standing on Scarborough seafront, introducing the viewers to a dog who could play the drums, the dog waving his limbs in the direction of a tiny snare, drumsticks gaffer taped to his paws. Instead of finding this image justly disturbing, Suki Meadows was laughing, bubbling and fizzing away, and for a moment Emma contemplated phoning Dexter, making up an excuse and going back to bed, because really, what was the point? It wasn't just the effervescing girlfriend. The fact was Em and Dex didn't get on well these days. More often than not, he would cancel their meetings at the last minute, and when they did see each other, he seemed distracted or uncomfortable. They spoke to each other in strange, strangulated voices, and had lost the knack of making each other laugh, jeering at each other instead in a spiteful, mocking tone. Their friendship was like a wilted bunch of flowers that she insisted on topping up with water. Why not let it die instead? It was unrealistic to expect a friendship to last forever, and she had lots of other friends, the old college crowd, her friends from school, and Ian, of course, but To whom could she confide about Ian? Not Dexter. Not anymore. The dog played the drums, and Suki Meadows laughed, and Emma snapped the TV off. In the hallway, she examined herself in the mirror. She had been hoping for understated sophistication, but she felt like a makeover, abandoned halfway through. Recently, she had been eating more pepperoni than she had ever thought possible, and there was the result, a little pot belly. Had he been there, Ian would have said that she looked beautiful, but all she saw was the swell of her belly through black satin. She placed her hand on it, closed the front door, and began the long journey from an ex-council flat in E17 to WC2. Well, hey! A hot summer night on 5th Street, and he was on the phone to Suki. Did you see it? What? The dog playing the drums. It was amazing. Dexter stood outside, Bar Italia, sleek and matte black in shirt and suit, a little Trilby-style hat pushed back on his head. The mobile phone held 4 inches from his ear. He had the sensation that if he hung up, he would still be able to hear her. Little drumsticks on his little paws. It was hysterical, he said, though in truth he couldn't bring himself to watch. Envy was not a comfortable emotion for Dexter, but he knew the whispers, that Suki was the real talent, that she had been carrying him, and comforted himself with the notion that Suki's current high-profile, large salary, and popular appeal were a kind of artistic compromise. Britain's most talented pet? He would never sell out like that, even if someone asked him to. 9 million viewers, they reckon, this week. 10, maybe. Suki, can I just explain something about the telephone? You don't have to shout into it. The phone does that bit for you. She huffed and hung up on him, and from across the street, Emma took a moment to stand and watch as Dexter swore at the phone in his hand. He still looked great in a suit. It was a shame about the hat, but at least he wasn't wearing those ridiculous headphones. She watched his face brighten as he saw her, and she felt a swell of affection and hope for the evening. You really should get rid of that, she said, nodding towards the phone. He slipped it into his pocket and kissed her cheek. So you've got a choice. You can either phone me, actually me personally, or you can phone a building in which I might just happen to be at the time. Phone the building. And if I miss the call, well, God forbid you should miss a call. It's not 1988 anymore, Em. Yes, I know that. 6 months. I give you 6 months before you cave. Never. A bet. Okay, a bet. If I ever buy a mobile phone, I'll buy you dinner. Well, that'll make a change. Besides, they give you brain damage. They do not damage your brain. How can you tell? And they stood for a moment in silence, both with a vague sense that the evening had not started well. Can't believe you're getting at me already, he said sulkily. Well, that's my job, she smiled and embraced him, pressing her cheek against his. I'm not getting at you. Sorry. His hand was on her bare neck. It's been ages. Far too long. He stepped back. You look beautiful, by the way. Thank you, so do you. Well, not beautiful. Handsome, then. Thank you. He took her hands and held them out to the side. You should wear dresses more often. You look almost feminine. I like your hat now. Take it off. And the shoes. She twisted an ankle towards him. It's the world's first orthopedic high heel. They began to walk through the crowds towards Wardour Street, Emma taking his arm, then holding the material of his suit between finger and thumb, rubbing at the strange nap of the fabric. What is this, by the way? Velvet? Velour? Moleskin. I had a tracksuit in that material once. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Dex and Em. Em and Dex, like Rogers and Astaire. Burton and Taylor. Mary and Joseph. Dexter laughed and took her hand, and soon they were at the restaurant. Poseidon was a huge bunker excavated from the remains of an underground car park. Entrance was by way of a vast theatrical staircase that seemed miraculously suspended above the main room and formed a permanent distraction to the diners below, who spent much of the evening assessing the beauty or fame of the new arrivals. Feeling neither beautiful nor famous, Emma sloped down the stairs, one hand on the banister, the other cupping her belly, until Dexter took this arm and stopped, surveying the room as proudly as if he were the architect. So, what do you think? Club Tropicana, she said. The interior had been styled to suggest the romance of a luxury liner from the 20s. Velvet booths, liveried waiters bearing cocktails, decorative portholes that opened onto a view of nothing, and this lack of natural light gave the place a submarine aspect, as if it had already hit the iceberg and was on its way down. The intended air of Interwar elegance was further undermined by the clamor and ostentation of the room, the pervading atmosphere of youth and sex, money and deep fat frying. All the burgundy velvet and pressed peach linen in the world couldn't stifle the tumultuous noise from the open-plan kitchen, a blur of stainless steel and white. So here it is at last, thought Emma, the 80s. Are you sure this is okay? It looks quite expensive. I told you, my treat. He tucked the label into the back of her dress, having glanced at it first, then took her hand and led her down the rest of the stairs with a little austere trot, into the heart of all that money, sex, and youth. A sleek, handsome man in absurd naval epaulets told them their table would be 10 minutes, so they pushed their way to the cocktail lounge, where another faux naval man was busy juggling bottles. What do you want, Em? Gin and tonic? Dexter tutted. You're not in the Mandela bar now. You've got to have a proper drink. 2 martinis, Bombay and Sapphire, very dry with a twist. Emma made to speak, but Dexter held up an autocratic finger. Trust me, best martinis in London. Obediently, she ummed and awed at the bartender's performance, Dexter commentating throughout. The trick is to get everything really, really cold before you start. Ice water in the glass, gin in the freezer. How do you know all this? My mum taught me when I was, 9? They touched glasses, silently toasting Allison, and both felt hope again for the evening and for their friendship. Emma raised the martini to her lips. I've never had one of these before. The first taste was delicious, icy and immediately intoxicating, and she tried not to spill it as she shuddered. She was about to thank him when Dexter placed his glass in Emma's hand, a good half of it already gone. Off to the loo, they're incredible here, the best in London. Can't wait, she said, but he had already gone, and Emma stood alone with 2 drinks in her hand, attempting to exude an aura of confidence and glamour, so as not to look like a waitress. Suddenly a tall woman stood over her in a leopard-skin corset, stockings and suspenders, her appearance so sudden and startling that Emma gave a little yelp as her martini sloshed over her wrist. Cigarettes? The woman was extraordinarily beautiful, voluptuous and barely dressed, like a figure from the fuselage of a B-52, her breasts seeming to recline on a cantilevered tray of cigarettes and cigars. Would you like anything? She repeated, smiling through powdery foundation and adjusting with one finger the black velvet choker around her neck. Oh, no, I don't smoke, said Emma, as if this were a personal failing she intended to address. But the woman had already redirected her smile over Emma's shoulder, fluttering the sticky black lace of her eyelashes. Cigarettes, sir? Dexter smiled, sliding his wallet from the inside of his jacket as he scanned the wares on display below her bosom. With a connoisseur's flourish, he settled on 20 Marlboro Lights, and the cigarette girl nodded as if Sir had made an excellent choice. Dexter handed her a 5-pound note folded lengthwise. Keep the change, he smiled. Was there ever a more empowering phrase than keep the change? He used to feel self-conscious saying it, but not anymore. She gave an extraordinary aphrodisiac smile, and for one callous moment, Dexter wished it were the cigarette girl, not Emma, who would be joining him for dinner. Looking at him, the little dear, thought Emma, noticing this little flicker of self-satisfaction. There had been a time not so long ago when the boys all wanted to be Che Guevara. Now they all wanted to be Hugh Hefner with a games console. As the cigarette girl wiggled into the crowd, Dexter really looked as if he might try and pat her bottom. You've got drool on your moleskin. Pardon? What was that all about? Cigarette girl, he shrugged, sliding the unopened packet into his pocket. This place is famous for it. It's glamour, a bit of theater. So why is she dressed as a prostitute? I don't know, Em. Maybe her woolly black tights are in the wash. He took his martini and drained it. Post-feminism, isn't it? Emma looked skeptical. Oh, is that what we're calling it now? Dexter nodded towards the cigarette girl's bottom. You could look like that if you wanted to. No one misses a point quite like you, Dex. What I mean is, it's about choice. It's empowering. Mind like a laser. If she chooses to wear the outfit, she can wear the outfit. But if she refused, she would be sacked. And so would the waiters. And anyway, maybe she likes wearing it. Maybe it's fun. Maybe she feels sexy in it. That is feminism, isn't it? Well, it's not the dictionary definition. Don't make me out to be some kind of chauvinist. I'm a feminist, too. Emma tutted and rolled her eyes, and he was reminded just how annoying and preachy she could be. I am a feminist. And I will fight to the death, mind, for the right of a woman to display her breasts for tips. And now it was his turn to roll his eyes and give a patronizing laugh. It's not 1988, Em. What does that mean? You keep saying it, and I still don't know what it means. It means don't keep fighting battles that are already lost. The feminist movement should be about equal pay and equal opportunities and civil rights, not deciding what a woman can or can't wear of her own free will on a Saturday night. Her mouth fell open in indignation. That's not what and anyway, I'm buying you dinner. Don't give me a hard time. And it was at moments like this that she had to remind herself that she was in love with him, or had once been in love with him a long time ago. They stood on the edge of a long, pointless argument that she felt she would win, but which would leave the evening in tatters. Instead, she hid her face in her drink, her teeth biting the glass, and counted slowly before saying, "Let's change the subject." But he wasn't listening, gazing over her shoulder instead, as the maitre d' beckoned them over. "Come on, I've managed to get us a banquet." They settled into the purple velvet booth and scrutinized the menus in silence. Emma had been expecting something fancy and French, but this was basically expensive canteen food. Fish cakes, shepherd's pie, burgers, and she recognized Poseidon as the kind of restaurant where the ketchup comes on a silver salver. "It's modern British," explained Dexter patiently, as if paying all that money for sausage and mash was very modern, very British. "I'm going to have oysters," said Dexter. "The natives, I think." "Are they friendly?" said Emma weakly. "What?" "The natives. Are they friendly?" She persevered and thought, my God, I'm turning into Ian. Uncomprehending, Dexter frowned and returned to the menu. "No, they're just sweeter. Pearly and sweet, and finer than rock oysters. More delicate. I'll get 12. "You're very knowledgeable all of a sudden." "I love food. I've always loved food and wine. I remember that tuna stir-fry you cooked me that time. I can still taste it in the back of my throat. Ammonia. Not cooking. Restaurants. I eat out most days now. As a matter of fact, I've been asked if I want to review for one of the Sundays." "Restaurants?" "Cocktail bars. Weekly column called Barfly. Sort of men about town thing. And you'd write it yourself?" "Of course I'd write it myself," he said, though he had been assured that the column would be heavily ghosted. "What is there to say about cocktails?" "You'd be surprised. Cocktails are very cool now. Sort of a retro glamour thing. In fact," he put his mouth to the empty martini glass, "I'm something of a mixologist myself." "Misogynist?" "Mixologist. I'm sorry, I thought you said misogynist." "Ask me how to make a cocktail. Any cocktail you like." She pressed her chin with her finger. "Okay, Jaeger-top. Oh, lager-top. I'm serious, Em. It's a real skill." "What is?" "Mixology. People go on special courses. Maybe you should have done it for your degree. It would certainly have been more fucking useful." The remark was so belligerent and sour that Emma visibly winced, and Dexter seemed a little taken aback, too, hiding his face in the wine list. "What do you want, red or white? I'm going to get another martini, then we'll start with a nice biscotti. Muscadet for the oysters, then go on to something like a Margot. What do you think?" He ordered and then was off to the loo again, taking his second martini with him, which Emma found unusual and vaguely unsettling. The minutes stretched. She read the wine label, then read it again, then stared into space and wondered at what point he had become such a mixologist. And why was she sounding so spiky, mean and joyless? She didn't care what the cigarette girl wore. Not really, not that much. So why did she sound so priggish and judgmental? Whoop. Oi. She resolved to relax and enjoy herself. This was Dexter, after all, her best friend, whom she loved. Didn't she? In London's most amazing toilets, Dexter hunched over the cistern and thought much the same thing. He loved Emma Morley, supposed he did, but more and more resented that air of self-righteousness of the community center, the theater co-op, of 1988. She was so subsidized. It wasn't appropriate, especially not in a setting like this, a place specifically designed to make a man feel like a secret agent. After the grim ideological gulag of a mid-80s education, its guilt and bullshit politics, he was finally being able to have some fun. And was it really such a bad thing to like a cocktail, a cigarette, a flirtation with a pretty girl? And the jokes, why was she always getting at him, reminding him of his failings? He hadn't forgotten them. All that stuff about things being posh and my fat bum and orthopedic high heels, the endless self-deprecation. Well, God saved me from... Well, God saved me from comedians, he thought, with their put-downs and their smart-asides, their insecurities and self-loathing. Why couldn't a woman have a bit of grace and elegance and self-confidence, instead of behaving all the time like some chippy stand-up? And class! Don't even mention class. He takes her to a great restaurant at his own expense, and on goes the cloth cap. There was a kind of vanity and self-regard in that working-class hero act that sent him crazy. Why is she still harping on about how she went to a comp, never went abroad on holiday, has never eaten an oyster? She's nearly 30 years old. All that was a long, long time ago. And it's time she took responsibility for her own life. He gave £1 to the Nigerian man who passed him his hand towel, stepped out into the restaurant, saw Emma across the room fiddling with her cutlery in her high school funeral dress, and he felt a new wave of irritation. In the bar, to his right, he could see the cigarette girl standing alone. She saw him and smiled, and he decided to make a detour. 20 Marlboro Lights, please. What, again? She laughed, her hand touching his wrist. What can I say? I'm like one of those beagles. She laughed again, and he pictured her in the banquet next to him, his hand under the table on her stockinged thigh. He reached for his wallet. Actually, I'm going to this party later with my old mate from college over there. Old mate, he thought, was a nice touch. And I don't want to run out of cigarettes. He handed her a £5 note, folded crisply lengthwise in two, held between first and second finger. Keep the change. She smiled, and he noticed a tiny speck of ruby lipstick on her white front teeth. He wanted very much to hold her chin and wipe it off with his thumb. You have lipstick. Where? He extended his arm until his finger was 2 inches from her mouth. Just there. Can't take me anywhere. She ran the point of her pink tongue back and forth across her teeth. Better? She grinned. Much, he smiled, and stepped away, then turned back to her. Just out of interest, he said, what time do you finish here tonight? The oysters had arrived, lying glossy and alien on their bed of melting ice. Emma had been passing the time by drinking heavily, with the fixed smile of someone who's been left alone and really doesn't mind at all. Finally, she saw him weaving across the restaurant a little unsteadily. He bundled into the booth. I thought you'd fallen in. This was something that her granny used to say. She was using her grandmother's material. Sorry, he said, but nothing more. They began on the oysters. So listen, there's a party later tonight. My mate Oliver, who I play poker with. I've told you about him. He tipped the oyster into his mouth. He's a baronet. Emma felt seawater dribble down her wrist. And what's that got to do with anything? What do you mean? Him being a baronet? I'm just saying, he's a nice bloke. Lemon on that? No, thank you. She swallowed the thing, still trying to work out if she had been invited to the party or just informed that a party was taking place. So where is this party then? She said. Holland Park, massive great house. Oh, okay. Still not sure. Was he inviting her or excusing himself early? She ate another oyster. You're very welcome to come along, he said finally, reaching for the Tabasco sauce. Am I? Absolutely, he said. She watched as he unblocked the sticky neck of the Tabasco bottle with the tine of his fork. It's just, you won't know anyone there, that's all. Clearly, she was not invited. I'll know you, she said weakly. Yes, I suppose so. And Suki will be there. Isn't she filming in Scarborough? They're driving her back tonight. She's doing very well, isn't she? Well, we both are, he said quickly and a little too loud. She decided to let it pass. Yes, that's what I meant. You both are. She picked up an oyster, then put it back. I really like Suki, she said, though she had met her only once, at an intimidating Studio 54 themed party in a private club in Hoxton, and Emma had liked her, though she couldn't escape the feeling that Suki treated her as rather quaint, one of Dexter's homely, old-style friends, as if she were only at the party because she'd won the phone-in competition. He necked another oyster. She's great, isn't she, Suki? Yes, she is. How's it going with you two? Oh, all right. Bit tricky, you know, being in the public eye all the time. Tell me about it, said Emma, but he didn't seem to hear. And I sometimes feel like I'm going out with this public address system, but it's great. Really. You know the best thing about the relationship? Go on. She knows what it's like, being on the telly. She understands. Dexter, that is the most romantic thing I've ever heard. And there she goes again, he thought, the snippy little comments. Well, it's true, he shrugged, and decided that as soon as he could pay the bill, their evening would be over. As if, as an afterthought, he added, So this party, I'm just worried about you getting home, that's all. Walthamstow's not Mars, Dex. It's just northeast London. It supports human life. I know. It's on the Victoria Line. But it's just a long way on public transport, and the party won't get going till midnight. You'll arrive, and then you'll have to go, unless I give you money for the cab. I do have money. They do pay me. Holland Park to Walthamstow, though? If it's awkward for me to come, it's not awkward. I want you to come. Let's decide later, shall we? And without excusing himself, he went to the toilet again, taking his glass with him as if he had another table in there. Emma sat and drank glass after glass of wine and continued to simmer, building to a steady rolling boil. And so the pleasure wore on. He returned just as the main courses arrived. Emma examined her beer-battered haddock with minted pea puree. The thick, pale chips had been machine-cut into perfect oblongs and were stacked up like building blocks, with the battered fish teetering precariously on top, 6 inches off the plate, as if it might hurl itself into the pool of thick green gloop below. What was that game? The stacked wooden blocks? Carefully, she extracted a chip from the top of the pile, hard and cold inside. How's the king of comedy? Since returning from the toilet, Dexter's tone had become even more belligerent and provoking. Emma felt traitorous. This might have been her cue to confide in someone about the mess of her relationship and her confusion as to what to do next, but she couldn't talk to Dexter. Not now. She swallowed raw potato. Ian's great, she said emphatically. Cohabiting okay? Flat coming along, is it? Fantastic. You haven't seen it yet, have you? You should come round. The invite was half-hearted and the reply a non-committal as if Dexter was doubtful of the existence of pleasure beyond Underground Zone 2. There was a silence and they returned to their plates. How's your steak? She asked eventually. Dexter seemed to have lost his appetite, dissecting the bloody red meat without actually eating it. Sensational. How's the fish? Cold. Is it? He peered at her plate, then shook his head sagely. It's opaque, Em. That's how fish should be cooked, so it just turns opaque. Dexter. Her voice was hard and sharp. It's opaque because it's deep frozen. It hasn't been defrosted. Is it? He prodded angrily inside the sleeve of batter with his finger. Well, we'll send it back. It's fine. I'll just eat the chips. No, fuck it. Send it back. I'm not paying for fucking frozen fish. What is this, B-jams? We'll get you something else. He waved a waiter over, and Emma watched Dexter assert himself, insisting that it wasn't good enough, and it said fresh fish on the menu. He wanted it taken off the bill and a replacement main course provided free of charge. She tried to insist she wasn't hungry anymore, while Dexter in turn insisted that she had to have a proper main course because it was free. There was no choice but to stare at the menu all over again, while the waiter and Dexter glared at her, and all the time his own steak sat there, mauled but uneaten, until finally it was settled. She got her free green salad, and they were alone again. They sat in silence in the wreckage of the evening in front of 2 plates of unwanted food, and she thought that she might cry. Well, this is going well, he said, and tossed down his napkin. She wanted to go home. She would skip dessert, forget the party, he clearly didn't want her there anyway, and go home. Maybe Ian would be back, kind and considerate and in love with her, and they could sit and talk or just cuddle up and watch TV. So, his eyes were scanning the room as he spoke. How's the teaching? It's fine, Dexter, she scowled. What have I done? He replied indignantly, eyes snapping back to her. She spoke levelly. If you're not interested, don't ask. I am interested. It's just, he poured himself more wine. I thought you were meant to be writing some book or something. I am writing some book or something, but I also have to earn a living, and also more to the point, I enjoy it, Dexter, and I'm a bloody good teacher. I'm sure you are. It's just, well, you know the expression. Those who can. Emma's mouth fell open. Stay calm. No, I'm not familiar with it, Dexter. Tell me, what expression? You know. No, seriously, Dexter, tell me. It's not important. He was starting to look sheepish. I'd like to know. Finish the sentence. Those who can. He sighed, a glass of wine in his hand, then spoke flatly. Those who can do. Those who can't teach. She spat the words, and those who teach say go fuck yourself. And now his glass of wine was in his lap as Emma shoved the table away and jumped to her feet, grabbing her bag, knocking over bottles, clattering plates as she clambered out of the booth, storming through that hateful, hateful place. All around her people were staring now, but she didn't care, and she just wanted to be out. Do not cry. You will not cry, she commanded herself, and glancing behind her saw Dexter mopping furiously at his lap, placating the waiter, then following on in pursuit. She turned, broke into a run, and now here was the cigarette girl, striding down the stairs towards her on long legs and high heels, a grin splitting her scarlet mouth. Despite her vow, Emma felt hot tears of humiliation prick her eyes, and now she was falling onto the stairs, stumbling on those stupid high shoes, and there was an audible gasp from the audience of diners behind her as she fell to her knees. The cigarette girl was beside her, holding onto her elbow with a look of maddening, genuine concern. Are you all right there? Yes, thank you, I'm fine. But now Dexter had caught up with her, was helping her up. Firmly, she shook herself free of his grip. Get off me, Dexter. Don't shout, calm down. I will not calm down. All right, I'm sorry. Whatever it is you're angry about, I'm sorry. She turned to him on the stairs, eyes blazing. What, you don't know? No, come back to the table and you can tell me. But she was tumbling on through the swing doors now, pushing them close beside her, so that the metal edge cracked him sharply on the knee. He limped after her. This is stupid. We're both a bit drunk, that's all. No, you're drunk. You're always drunk or off your face on something or other. Every time I see you. Do you realize I literally haven't seen you sober for, 3 years? I've forgotten what you're like sober. You're too busy boring on about yourself or your new pals or running to the loo every 10 minutes. I don't know if it's dysentery or too much coke, but either way it's fucking rude, and most of all it's boring. Even when you talk to me, you're always looking over my shoulder in case there's some better option. That's not true. It is true, Dexter. Well, bollocks to it. You're a TV presenter, Dex. You've not invented penicillin. It's TV. And crap TV at that. Well, sod it. I've had enough. They were out amongst the crowds on Wardour Street in the fading summer light. Let's go somewhere and talk about this. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to go home. Emma, please. Dexter, just leave me alone, will you? You're being hysterical. Come here. He took her arm once again and idiotically tried to hug her. She pushed him away, but he held on to her. People were staring at them now, another couple fighting in Soho on a Saturday night, and she relented finally, allowing herself to be pulled into a side street. They were silent now, Dexter stepping away from her, so that he could take her in. She was standing with her back to him, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand, and he suddenly felt a hot pang of shame. Finally, she spoke in a quiet voice, her face to the wall. Why are you being like this, Dexter? Like what? You know what. I'm just being myself. She spun to face him. No, you're not. I know what you're like, and this isn't you. You're horrible like this. You're obnoxious, Dexter. I mean, you always were a bit obnoxious, every now and then a bit full of yourself, but you were funny too, and kind sometimes, and interested in people other than yourself, but now you're just out of control. With the booze, the drugs, I'm just having fun. She sniffed once and looked up at him through smudged black eyes. And sometimes I get carried away, that's all. If you weren't so judgmental all the time. Am I? I don't think I am. I try not to be. I just don't. She stopped herself speaking, shook her head. I know you've been through a lot in the last few years, and I've tried to understand that. Really, I have, with your mom and all, but... Go on, he said. I just don't think you're the person I used to know. You're not my friend anymore. That's all. He could think of nothing to say to this, so they stood in silence until Emma put her hand out, took 2 fingers of his hand, squeezed them in her palm. Maybe Maybe this is it then, she said. Maybe it's just over. Over? What's over? Us, you and me, friendship. There are things I needed to talk to you about, Dex, about Ian and me. If you're my friend, I should be able to talk to you, but I can't. And if I can't talk to you, well, what is the point of you? Of us? What's the point? You said yourself people change. No use getting sentimental about it. Move on, find someone else. Yeah, but I didn't mean us. Why not? Because we're us. We're Dex and Em, aren't we? Emma shrugged. Maybe we've grown out of each other. He said nothing for a moment, then spoke. So do you think I've grown out of you, or you've grown out of me? She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I think you think I'm dreary. I think you think I cramp your style. I think you've lost interest in me. Em, I do not think you're dreary. And neither do I. Neither do I. I think I'm fucking marvelous, if you only knew it, and I think you used to think so too, but if you don't, or if you're going to just take it for granted, then that's fine. I'm just not prepared to be treated like this anymore. Treated like what? She sighed, and it was a moment before she spoke. Like you always wanted to be somewhere else, with someone else. He would have denied this, but the cigarette girl was waiting in the restaurant at that very moment, the number of his mobile phone tucked into her garter. Later, he would wonder if there was something else he might have said to save the situation. A joke, perhaps, but nothing occurred to him, and Emma let go of his hand. Well, off you go, she said. Go to your party. You're rid of me now. You're free. With failing bravado, Dexter tried to laugh. You sound like you're dumping me. She smiled sadly. I suppose I am, in a way. You're not who you used to be, Dex. I really, really liked the old one. I'd like him back, but in the meantime, I'm sorry, but I don't think you should phone me anymore. She turned and, a little unsteadily, began to walk off down the side alley in the direction of Leicester Square. For a moment, Dexter had a fleeting but perfectly clear memory of himself at his mother's funeral, curled up on the bathroom floor while Emma held on to him and stroked his hair. Yet somehow he had managed to treat this as nothing, to throw it all away for dross. He followed a little way behind her. Come on, Em, we're still friends, aren't we? I know I've been a little weird. It's just... She stopped for a moment, but didn't turn round, and he knew that she was crying. Emma? Then very quickly she turned, walked up to him, and pulled his face to hers, her cheek warm and wet against his, speaking quickly and quietly in his ear, and for one bright moment he thought he was to be forgiven. Dexter, I love you so much, so much, and I probably always will. Her lips touched his cheek. I just don't like you anymore. I'm sorry. And then she was gone, and he found himself on the street, standing alone in this back alley, trying to imagine what he would possibly do next. Ian returns at just before midnight to find Emma curled up on the sofa watching some old movie. You're back early. How was Golden Boy? Awful, she murmurs. If Ian feels any glee at this, he doesn't let it into his voice. Why, what happened? I don't want to talk about it, not tonight. Why not? Emma, tell me. What did he say? Did you argue? Ian, please, not tonight. Just come here, will you? She shuffles up so that he can join her on the sofa, and he notices the dress that she is wearing, the kind she never wears for him. Is that what you wore? She holds the hem of the dress between finger and thumb. It was a mistake. I think you look beautiful. She curls up against him, her head on his shoulder. How was the gig? Not great. Did you do the cats and dogs stuff? Uh-huh. Was there heckling? A little bit of heckling. Maybe it's not your best material. Bit of booing. That's part of it, though, isn't it? Everyone gets heckled sometimes. I suppose so. I suppose sometimes I just worry. What? That I might just be not very funny. She speaks into his chest. Ian? What? You're a very, very funny man. Thanks, Em. He rests his head against her and thinks about the small crimson box lined with crumpled silk that contains the engagement ring. For the last 2 weeks it has been tucked inside a balled-up pair of walking socks, waiting for its moment. Not right now, though. In 3 weeks' time, they'll be on the beach in Corfu. He imagines a restaurant overlooking the sea, a full moon, Emma in her summer dress, freshly tanned and smiling, perhaps a bowl of calamari between them. He imagines presenting the ring to her in an amusing way. For some weeks he has been devising different romantic comedy scenarios in his head, perhaps dropping it into her wine glass while she's in the loo, or finding it in the mouth of his grilled fish and complaining to the waiter, getting it muddled up with the calamari rings. That might work. He might even just give it to her. He tries out the words in his head. Marry me, Emma Morley, marry me. Love you lots, Em, he said. Love you too, says Emma. Love you too. The cigarette girl sits at the bar on her 20-minute break, her costume on beneath her jacket, sipping whiskey and listening to this man as he talks on and on about his friend, that poor pretty girl who fell down the staircase. They've had some kind of row, apparently. The cigarette girl tunes in and out of the man's monologue, nodding every now and then, and glancing surreptitiously at her watch. It is 5 minutes to midnight, and she should really get back to work. The hour between The hour between 12 and 1 is the best for tips, the high water mark of lust and stupidity on the part of the male customers. 5 more minutes and she'll go. Poor guy can barely stand up anyway. She recognizes him from that stupid TV program. And doesn't he go out with Suki Meadows, but can't recall his name. Does anyone watch that show anyway? The man's suit is stained, the pockets bulging with packets of unsmoked cigarettes. There's a sheen of oil on his nose. His breath is bad. What's more, he still hasn't even bothered to ask her real name. The cigarette girl is called Cheryl Thompson. She works most days as a nurse, which is exhausting, but does an occasional shift here too, because she went to school with the manager and the tips are incredible if you're prepared to flirt a little. At home in her flat in Kilburn, her fiancé is waiting for her. Milo, Italian, 6'2", once a football player, now also a nurse. Very good looking. They're getting married in September. She would tell all this to the man if he asked, but he doesn't. So at 2 minutes to midnight on St. Swithin's Day, she excuses herself. Got to get back to work. No, I can't go to the party. Yes, I've got your number. Hope you and your friend work things out. And leaves the man alone at the bar, ordering another drink. Oh. The end. Thanks for listening. That was a roller coaster. Interesting for sure. Oh, thanks. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. That took an actual hour. That was a long chapter. Also, I started the stream at like 8:40 and my audio wasn't working, so I had to like end the stream and start it again and start the chapter over. Hi, Michael. How are you? But yeah, that was a lot. I just read a lot. That was like an hour and a half of reading for me. I think I did okay considering how like dry my throat is right now. But yeah, that was such a chapter, dude. I'm amazing. I'm so glad you're doing well. It's almost Valentine's Day, yo. Do you guys, I never do anything for Valentine's Day. Right? I think I went to dinner once. That was nice. But that's about it. I built... Wait, you designed your own gaming controller and built it? What? Does that mean like you found like a website where you can like custom order? Or did you actually... I want to know what this looks like. Can you post this in our Discord? There's a channel just for posting pictures. Oh, website. I want to see it. Yeah, send it. I want to see. Oh, dude, I did not mean to, but that one part almost had me, like, crying. Like, I was getting a little choked up. I don't know if y'all could hear that in my voice. I was really, like, not letting tears happen. Like, my eyes, like, welled up. They got a little wet, but I didn't actually have any tears. But that part when she just was like, you never make me feel like the best option or something. Like, you always make me feel like you're just waiting around for something better to come. That got me. I'm sorry. I really like that. I mean, I don't. I mean, it was really sad. I could just, like, feel her sadness. Yeah. And he's sad because his mom died and he's really not handling it well. And he's, like, not cherishing his really good, long-lasting friendships, which is super sad. And this chapter, he's just, like, kind of a dick, man. And we knew he was a dick, but he's, like, even to Emma? Yeah. Yeah, that part was hard to read. I just really felt for her. Because she's so awesome. And I love when she's like, I know I'm fucking marvelous. I just wish you knew it too. That was nice. I'm glad she said that. Like, that's really cool. Yeah, do you want to post it in the Discord? I want to look into it. Yeah, that's cool. So, like, custom wraps. That's cool. Yeah, can you send the website? I want to, look and see what it looks like. That'd be fun. I'd have to, think of what to put on it, but... Because if I wrapped a controller, I'd want to wrap my PlayStation one, but I'd want it to be wrapped in, Mario. And that's contradictory, so... You can't play Mario on the PlayStation, but... Cool. Unless you can. I'm not really sure what you can and can't do when it comes to consoles and games. Can you play Smash? No. Smash is a Switch game. I don't know what PlayStation is capable of. Is it also possible to play it on that? I don't know. Cool. Cool. Well, I wasn't planning on being on this late. I really wanted this to be over by 9, so I really need to go to bed. Yeah, really good chapter though. For real. I'm really glad. I don't know how the next chapter is gonna be. I think it's, they're not friends anymore. For, I don't know how long. So, sad. I knew that was gonna happen because I've seen the show and I've seen the movie, but oh my gosh, this is just making it so much more apparent to me that the show did so well with this story, because I was vividly picturing how that scene went when they're arguing on the street in the show. And how the whole restaurant scene, that's exactly how it went in the show. Y'all should watch the show when we're done with the book, because they did really good. But anyway, I have to go to bed. Yeah, I think that's all I was going to say. That chapter was really good. I really love... Okay, they didn't do this in the show. Then I need to get off. But they didn't do this in the show. I love that they, gave you a tiny bit of insight into the cigarette girl's personal life, and how in the show they just make her seem like another girl that's into Dex, a random girl, but she's not into him at all. She barely even works at the restaurant. She's actually a nurse and she's engaged. I like that they added that. That's really cool. But just a cool little detail that you get out of reading something as opposed to watching it. But so glad you guys are here with me while I read this book. It's so good. Oh, but I do have a couple little updates. So soon I'm getting a couple bots set up for my Discord, so join my Discord. It's fun. I'm trying to make it more fun. I have some post updates on there, and then also a Discord thing, if you're on there. Hope you have a good time. Thank you. I was about to say, if you are already a member or thinking about joining my Discord, we already sometimes do movie nights on Discord. I was thinking last week I could start doing a, Discord only read aloud sometimes too, because on top of reading for these read aloud streams, I have other books I want to read, personally. I'm trying to finish the Chronicles of Narnia, and then I started The Hobbit because I really want to read all of Tolkien's works, but I just have no motivation, and it's way harder for me to read through a book if I'm not reading out loud. So I was thinking we could, just for me to actually read what I want to read by myself, I could read to you guys, but not in this setting where I feel I have to look presentable and be on camera, just I could just be audio in the Discord and read Lord of the Rings out loud whenever I feel like it. So if you are not part of my Discord, please join. We do movie nights, and now we're about to do read alouds on Discord, so that'll be fun. But regardless, I also just post updates on when I'm going live again on here, there, so yeah. Okay, cool. Link. Well, the link actually is in the caption of this stream. So if you're able to look at that, or you can look at it once the stream is posted. The link is in every video posted on my channel, so I don't really have it right now, I'm sorry. But please join, seriously, I'd love it. I get so happy whenever we get someone new join, so, or literally anytime anyone posts in the Discord, I get so excited to read it and see. So anyway, yeah. So those are a couple new things that are coming, and then my next stream on here is gonna be Thursday night. I'll be doing a gaming stream. Yes, and I'm trying to post, I don't know, I was gonna maybe try and post another like highlights video of my last gaming stream. I'll try and do that soon, but those are all my updates. Thank you for listening. Thanks for hanging out with me. This was a really emotional, good chapter. Yeah, I'm glad you guys caught it. If you, first time listening and you're curious about the rest of the book that we've already read, all the other chapters are posted on my channel, my YouTube, you guys, channel. So you can go back and listen to those. But anyway, I'm officially tired and it's officially late, so I will see you guys Thursday night. I hope I get to hang out with all of you guys again. Yeah. If not, don't feel bad though, but it'd be cool. But okay, cool. I love you guys. Dang. Sorry, I keep catching my jewelry on this dress. This poor dress. Anyway, everybody stay safe, okay? Please? And I'll see y'all again soon. Good night. Oh, and I love you. I love you.